So at Hal's wishes, and I love this, most of this is not scripted. In fact, none of it's scripted, or very little. Hal said, let's just roll with it and let's tell the story. So, get my notes out here to kind of put some notes down. So, we're going to talk a lot about the journey today. We're going to talk a lot about posting a score, because your professional career certainly was about posting a score. I think all of us can relate to having to post a score of some expectation for us. We're going to talk about how life intersects with that, about our expectations and posting a score, and then we're going to talk about trust. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start about this young man in Shreveport and how it all started in golf.
I started playing golf when I was 11 years old, played all the sports all the way till I was 16, on mediocre teams, and I wanted to be a star just like everybody does. I wanted to get some credit. I wanted to be recognized. I wanted to be relevant. And that's a big word. I bet there's a lot of people in this room. We're still trying to be relevant, aren't we? Anyway, I came in and told my dad I'm going to quit playing everything else and I'm going to devote myself to golf. My dad was a huge football fan. He didn't like that at all. In fact, he didn't speak to me for about 30 days. And he walked in one day. I was wondering if he ever was going to talk to me again. And he said, I tell you what, I'm going to make a deal with you. If you treat this like a job, I'll fund the whole thing. He said, but the day you quit treating it like a job, you're going to work for me. He was in the oil business, and he started me at the bottom. He was going to put me in a pump supply business, where you fix the pumps. I'm sure there's some oil people in here that know that. I worked in there for 90 days, and I didn't want any more of that. So I worked hard at golf, and, that was my start.
All right. So you had a pretty good junior career, but let's touch base back with your dad and expectations that your dad had, because he was obviously a pretty imposing force early on and really throughout your career. So talk about that, because there are a lot of dads in this room with kids and sports, and talk about that. I know that's a mixed bag.
Yeah. So my dad, like many men in here, my dad I'm not sure I ever heard him say, I love you, Hal. And, I said to him not long ago, actually, he's 93 years old now. It's probably been 8 or 10 years ago. I said something to him about not ever saying he loved me. He said, oh, so you're a word guy, huh? See how everybody laughs in here. Y'all all understand what I'm talking about. And we do live in a word world, but because I guess I needed to hear it, I kept telling my kids all the time, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, to the point that it didn't mean anything. My dad meant it all the time. He showed me every day. Everything I needed to do or accomplish, he told me. He told me the truth. Sometimes it wasn't what I wanted to hear. He and I fought like cats and dogs, but he made me. I can tell you that. I couldn't have done the things that I did without the leadership of my dad. I gravitated to people like him. Jackie Burke was a second father to me, but he told me the truth all the time too. So, I'm not sure I used a whole bunch of that with my kids, because I wanted to, at the time I was still on this journey of trying to figure out who I was. And I think there's a lot of fathers in here too. We don't get a manual on how to raise a child. We're just doing the best we can, taking it a day at a time. And, I wanted to be something that my dad wasn't, because I didn't really recognize how good my dad was at the time. That came at a much later date.
Okay. So that starts with voices. And you talk a lot about in the journey about voices that you allowed to enter your journey. One, first and foremost, was your dad. But then you've talked about everyone's looking for the holy grail of golf. Everyone's looking for the holy grail of really of life, probably work, parenting. So it's kind of ironic. We're here at Austin Country Club. Y'all hear about this teacher named Harvey Pinnock. And your dad says, we're going to go hear the voice of Harvey Pinnock. Talk about that trip.
So I was having some success as a high school golfer, and there was a female player in Shreveport, Barbara Fay Body, who had played the LPGA Tour, and her dad was Ned White, and Ned White has a big name in Shreveport. A lot of people had worked with him, and Barbara Fay told my dad, said, you need to take Hal to see Harvey Pinnock. He's like he's a guru when it comes to golf. You need to take him to see Harvey Pinnock. So my dad called up Harvey Pinnock and set up a time to see him. And it's back when Austin Country Club was where y'all used to be. And I went into the pro shop, and Harvey Pinnock walked in, and I thought he was a cart man or something. I didn't know who Harvey Pinnock was. And he comes out and he said, are you Hal Sutton? And I said, yes, sir, I am. He said, I'm Harvey Pinnock. He said, let's go. So we start out the door, and my dad is like there, and Mr. Pinnock turns around and he says, oh, I'm sorry. He said, you must be Mr. Sutton. He said, I am. He said, we won't be needing you, Mr. Sutton. Well, you can imagine how that went over with my dad, because, you know, he wanted to be in on everything. He was very protective. He was, you know, even protective of gurus over me, you know. And so anyway, Mr. Pinnock and I went out on the driving range, and he told me, he said, look, I want you to hit 50 balls like you're warming up. And he said, I'm not going to say much. When you finish, I'm going to say, I'll get up and say something. So I went through the whole 50 balls. He never said a word. I hit them all. And he said, Hal, he said, you know, your grip's a little bit stronger than they are today. He said, but I think that's the future, so don't let anybody talk you out of it. He said, keep the club in front of you. He actually, you know, stood up, and club went up, not around. And the club goes up in front of you over here. And he said, when you get over here, he said, just admire it, because it's going to be right where you need it to be. That was a lesson. So we go back in, and my dad, curious, you know, what'd he say? What'd he say? I said, he didn't say much, Dad. And so my dad says, well, how much do we owe you, Mr. Pinnock? He said, you don't owe me anything. He said, I should have paid you to watch him hit balls. So I thanked him, and we start out the door. And Mr. Pinnock said, oh, yeah, Mr. Sutton, there is one more thing. He said, if you'll stay out of his way, he'll be a hell of a player one day. Needless to say, my dad did not hear that. Selective hearing. But anyway, that was my experience with Mr. Pinnock.
So from the guru early on, you heard you're enough.
He told me, essentially that's
Just
what he
be you.
said. Yeah, but you know what? As part of life, you always wonder if you're enough. You know, you keep looking for more. My good friend Jackie Burke, he used to have this saying all the time, much wants more. And I think everybody in here can relate to that. Every time he said that to me, it's like, wow, that's a powerful statement. Much wants more. And I live by that. You know, I never thought I'm still on the journey of success. You know, I don't think nobody ever finishes. And, you know, but we're trying to get as far down that road as we can, you know. And when I say success, I don't necessarily mean financial success. I mean, whatever you're trying to do, you want more. You want more accomplishment. You want more of everything, basically. So, yeah.
All right. So then we go off to college, and we choose Centenary right there at home. And you had some moderate success there. You were 3-time All-American. Pretty good. And then you became the 1980 USAM champ. So you were doing pretty good. So it's time to turn pro. Tell us about the conversation with your dad about turning pro.
Well, my dad didn't want me to turn pro. He wanted to keep me like this. He said, Hal, he said, you should try to be another Bobby Jones. I said, well, I don't know that that's possible anymore, Dad. I mean, I can't play in enough golf tournaments. These guys that are playing. I mean, back in those days, everybody had a job. Even the pros had a job at different clubs. And I said, I just don't think that's possible. Everybody playing every day. Well, I think you could do it if you really wanted to. It's like, so I went to work for my dad for 6 months. And, he had like 200 people working for him. I was probably the least paid and talked to me the harshest, basically, setting the example. Finally, one day I walk in his office and I said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and turn pro. I said, but I've thought about this. I said, I think I need to borrow about $18,000 from you. He said, so where'd you come up with the $18,000? I'm just curious. I said, I think I can play for 6 months, $3,000 a month, and drive. So he hollered into his secretary. He said, Marilyn, he said, write Hal a check for $18,000. He'll be back. He'll need more. So I paid him back in about 4 months, and he and I bought an airplane together, and I paid for it, and he had to pay me back. But I'm taking full credit for that. He made me who I was at the time. He pushed me. He would do what a lot of fathers did. He doubted me on the surface, but underneath he was believing in me with all of his heart. But he wanted me to think. He never wanted me to see the end. He wanted me to strive all the time. He's 93 now, and we lost my mother last year, and he fell 2 days later and had a brain bleed and had brain surgery. And he's had another surgery since. And he's on a walker now, but he's still the tough old guy that he was. I'd call him every day at 5 o'clock. And, I do that because it's routine. He knows. And I'm not even sure he knew who I was last night, but the truth is, he's trying to tell me something, and it wasn't making sense to me at all. My sister was sitting there with him. I had to say, what was he trying to tell me? He was watching golf all day long, and he was trying to tell you about the golf tournament. Nothing in the conversation had golf in it, but he was telling me, and we're still close. I wish he could tell me some of the things that I used to not appreciate.
So you turn pro, and here comes some more outside voices. You get labeled as one of your childhood heroes. You're going to become the heir apparent. You're the next Jack Nicklaus. And in 1982, you get PGA Rookie of the Year. Doing pretty good. And then comes 1983, the PGA Championship against Jack Nicklaus. I know you and Jack are friends. Take us into a picture window of what it's like to have those expectations put on you in front of thousands of people. And then what was it like to compete and play against Jack?
Well,
give us a little picture window into Jack Nicklaus.
I wasn't the first person that they ever named the heir apparent. There's a man right here in Austin, Texas that got that same thing, Mr. Crenshaw, They thought he was going to be the next, It's hard to fill shoes like that. Ben was a great player. He's one of my really good friends. Tough to live up to that. I mean, this guy, Mr. Nicholas, played the game like nobody else had ever played it, basically. And I looked up to him so much. I mean, my dad and I would sit there and watch him play when I was growing up. My dad used to tell me all the time. He would find these little things, these pre-shot routines and things that Mr. Nicholas would do. And he would say to me, Hal, if that's good enough for Jack Nicklaus, that ought to be good enough for you. I mean, it was constant analyzing. And I can tell you this for sure. After every tournament I ever played, that's all my dad did was analyze and what I did wrong. He never really talked about what I did right. Even when I would win a tournament, he would be there sometimes when I would win. And we'd be going to the airport or whatever else after that, and he'd pick up something I did wrong rather than something I did right. He never wanted me to lose sight of improvement. There's always room to improve.
So take us back to being in the PGA Championship, 1983, with Jack. What's it like playing with Jack?
Well,
You played with him, and
no, he was in front of me. He was in front of me.
You played with him
I
before.
played with him a lot.
But you had him running you down.
The first time I played with Jack Nicklaus was at Marion in 1981. He was the defending U.S. Open champion. I was defending U.S. Amateur champion. And for those of you who've ever been to Marion, the first tee is right beside the veranda on the clubhouse. And it's packed around there for an event. And I'm not sure that I think my caddy pushed me out there when it was my turn to hit. They called my name. I don't even think I remembered them calling my name. Anyway, I tripled the first hole. Never will forget. I hit it right off the tee, buried it underneath the lip of the bunker. Couldn't have a worse start. And got around to the fifth hole, and I think I'm 5 over, and I've got about a 4-foot downhill putt, and Jack putts out. It's Hale Irwin's the other guy in the group. And I got about a 4-foot downhill putt, and everybody's running off after, nobody cared about anybody but Jack. And that used to really aggravate Hale Irwin because he's U.S. Open champion too. Anyway, he straddled my ball and said, "Hold on, please. We got one more player here." And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, what'd you do that for? Now everybody's watching, So anyway, I made the putt, and we get around to number 8, and I'm 7 over par. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I can break 90 or not. I was a good player, too. This was crazy, but I was nervous. And I walked straight up to Mr. Nicholas, and I said, Mr. Nicholas, I said, I've been nervous as I could be. And I said, playing with my idol, I just had to address you straight on. He said, how? He said, everybody wants to see you play well, and so do I. He said, just settle down and do what you know how to do. So I tied him from there in. He was leading the U.S. Open after the first 2 days. And, I wished I'd have said something to him before we played. I missed the cut by 1. So anyway.
But words mattered.
Yeah.
Words mattered. Words of encouragement mattered.
Yep.
From the great one. Mm-hmm. And then in 83, you're going down to win the tournament, and you hear the crowd.
Yeah, well, 2 weeks earlier, I'd lost a 6-shot lead at the Anheuser-Busch on the final round, and I didn't think I thought I could beat anybody in the world if you spotted me 6 shots, and I did. I just didn't I beat myself that day, and I went home totally embarrassed. I actually had to play an outing the next day at Virginia Beach, and I shot 60 the next day in this outing. I didn't sleep all night. I couldn't believe how poorly I played. And I went home and I worked on my game all week. And my dad wasn't even going to go to Riviera with me. And I said, "Look, you need to go with me." I said, I got to redeem myself. I said, "I'm going to win this tournament." So he decided he'd go with me. And I opened with 65. I was playing with Trevino and Lanny Watkins. And, I don't know how many of y'all know. They're both Texas guys, so Trevino's so funny. We finished. I shot 66 the second day, and Lanny shot 80, like 80, 76 or something, and went down the road. Trevino always give him heck, for missing the cut. But anyway, it was fun shooting those kind of scores with Trevino. He's a fun guy to play golf with. But anyway, got down to the final round, and I'm 4-shot lead going into number 12, and I bogeyed 12, 13, and 14. So now I got a 1-shot lead, and the bear's roaring. The crowd's telling me he's roaring. He's up there in front of me, and we didn't have electronic scoreboards in those days. It was the old-fashioned way where they just, got to love that, don't we? The old-fashioned way. So anyway, I buried my head in the towel, and I said, look, I'm saying a prayer, Lord, don't let me do this again. This will define me if I do. The only thing I knew to do, you hear that old cliche, play one shot at a time. The only thing I could do that moment to prevent this from happening was to drive it in the fairway on the 15th hole. That's where we were at, 15. So I drove it in the fairway. And old cliche, one shot at a time. That's what I did from there in. And, I mentioned to some people earlier that I worked with Byron Nelson early on, and Byron used to tell me how if you get scared, just try to drive it in the ground right in front of you. And he said, one thing about being scared, we've all been scared. That was good to hear. Guy won 19 tournaments in 1 year tell me we've all been scared. So I got to 18 at Riviera, and I don't know, I bet there's some people in here that's played Riviera before. Show me your hands if you played Riviera. There you go. So the 18th hole at Riviera, it's a big hill out there in front of you. And I'm standing there looking at that hill, and I said, oh, Mr. Nelson, I sure hope you know what you're talking about here, because I'm going to try to drive it in the ground right here in front of me. Anyway, it took off like it was going right into that hill, and because the ball spun, it rose, drove it in the fairway, and was able to get it into the green and shake hands with my idol at the end of the day and beat him by 1 shot. So.
But then, as the video notes, a storm began to brew in golf, and Tiger Woods. He came on the scene, and here we are, fast forward to the 2000 Players Championship. And it's Tiger Woods. And you get the rain delay, and as you said in the video, you anticipated that he probably would go for the green in 2 on 16, and he did. And he sunk the eagle putt like you said the night before, prophetically. And then it was down to 17 and 18 where you had to play it straight up. And you both parred 17, and then you go to 18. And this is where it gets interesting. Talk about the first 3 days at 18 and then the change you made on 18 and why on the final day.
Well, it got interesting on 17, really, because everybody hit in front of me on 17, and everybody hit it in the water on 17 the first 3 days. So I had to play the shot after somebody had hit it in the water. I never had the tee on 17. So, Tiger hits a shot. He hits it right at it, but you can tell when someone's hit it or not hit it well. And he hit it in the bottom groove. I could tell it wasn't a very good shot. And he didn't say anything, but I know in his heart he was saying, get up, get up. He cleared the water by about that much. And of course, I hit it in the middle of the green. He's in the deep rough right next to the pylons, and he leaves it about 8 or 9 feet short on the chip. And but before he gets to chip, he's walking in front of me to the green. And jokingly, I said, man, I really appreciate you clearing the water. You're the first guy who cleared the water in front of me. He didn't appreciate the humor in that. Anyway, so we go ahead. He makes a putt that's probably breaking 5 or 6 inches left to right. We all know how hard that putt is, and he drove it right in the middle of the hole. So we go to 18, and when I hold out on 17, my caddy, Freddie, my friend for life, Freddie said, Hal, he said, you're the best driver in the game. You got to hit driver. And all the way to the 18th hole. he's telling me you got to drive it because I'd hit 3-wood all week. 3-wood fairway was much wider, and it was a safe play to play the 3-wood, but you can have a 4-iron into the green. And, he wanted me to have the last shot into the green. We both knew he was going to hit that 2-iron stinger. And the only club I had in my bag that I could out-hit his 2-iron stinger was a driver. So I wanted the last shot. I needed to know what I was going to have to do on the last shot. So I hit driver when I hadn't hit it all week. And, of course, the driver for me, if I push it at all, I could go into the trees on the right. And so I had to aim it down the left-hand side, and basically if I pull it, it's in the water because I can't carry it if I pull it. So, I had to be right on the money with it, and I was.
You were. So you get to hit second. You get to watch Tiger hit a shot. And Tiger gets up there and hits a shot. What happens?
Well, he hit the ball long and to the right of the green. He missed the green, actually. And so, I had the shot I wanted, 179 yards. It was perfect 6-iron for me. I didn't have to hit it hard. I didn't have to hit it easy. It was just a stock club. And so when I said it, I'd never said be the right club today ever in my life. But when I hit the shot, it's like I know it's right at it. I know I hit it right on the button. I know it's supposed to come down within 2 or 3 yards of the right spot. The only thing that could strip me of that was some wind or something else. So that's where that really came from. Just let it be. So anyway, I hit the shot, and of course, I'm smart enough to know I'd played enough golf with Tiger. You don't ever turn your back on Tiger. He almost holed the chip. He literally barely missed on the left side of the hole. It goes by about 3 or 4 inches. So until that chip missed, I hadn't solved the problem yet. So
Yeah, that's the part of the story that no one hears. People say you hit it on the green, you be the right club today, you two-putt and you walk off. And yet Tiger almost hold the chip from an impossible spot.
Yeah. So really and truly, that wasn't the best shot I hit all day long, though. The day before on number 8, the only green I missed all week, the pin was on number 8, was on the back left, and the only way to get it close was to skim the left side. And I got a little bit close, and it fell off into the left bunker. So Tiger walked up there before me. I got to tell this story. Tiger walked up there before me, and he looks down at it. And that's back when Stevie Williams was caddying for him. And Tiger looks at it, turns around, and walks over to Stevie, and I'm watching this whole thing because I hadn't seen where my ball is at. And he looks at Stevie, and he goes, "He's dead." That's what he's saying. So
You actually heard him say that.
yeah. So anyway, I get back there and look at it, and he was right. I was dead. Ball had gone all the way across the bunker and to the other side, and bunker was about this deep from the side of the bunker, and I couldn't stand in the bunker. So I'm like this. So I told Freddie, my caddy, I said, and the pin's on the left side, so I got no green to work with. I got to throw it straight up. And I told Freddie, I said, if I can just stay level, I can hit this shot. It's by far the best shot I've ever hit in my life. And perfect. I nipped it perfect. It shot straight up in the air. It landed about a couple of feet on the green. It runs by about 8 feet. And so Tiger 2 putts, and I make my putt for par. And it's a little walk from the 8th green to the 9th tee. Tiger looked up at me and he said, Al, that was a hell of a shot right there. I said, I'm not going away, Tiger. I'm going to be right here. So, it was game on.
Wow. So we're skimming through a little bit. But you had the really, as you know anything about golf, the dream scenario is to get the phone call to perhaps maybe play in one Ryder Cup and represent your country. You happened to do it 4 times, 85, 87, 99, and 2002 as a player. Tell us a little bit about that experience and some maybe just a couple of stories from your playing as a player in the Ryder Cup and how that's different than representing your country.
Um, you know, there's so much talk today about the Ryder Cup, and players don't want to play if they don't get paid and all that sort of stuff. I'd have paid to play on the Ryder Cup team because the people that I admired so much, all they talked about was being on the Ryder Cup team. The Jackie Burks and the Byron Nelsons and the Ben Hogans. They they talked about being on and the reason why they did is because they came together as a team. They actually knew each other differently at the Ryder Cup than they did because golf is an individual sport. They weren't friends, they were opponents. So, they came together as friends to play for the country. So, you know, I enjoyed playing. Uh, when you're a player, you only have to worry about one player. That's you. When you're a captain, you got to worry about 12 players, 12 wives, and 12 caddies. So, that's the difference between being a player and being a captain.
Yeah. So tell us about being a player. Tell us a couple of stories that stick out in your mind of the Ryder Cups that you played in.
Well, that was,
I know there's a lot.
there's a lot. There's wins and losses. Um, great times. I played with Craig Stadler. First time I played in 1985. I paired with Craig Stadler. Trevino was the captain, and he paired me with Craig Stadler. I had never played a round of golf with Craig Stadler in my life. So I said to Lee, I said, "You want me to play with Stadler?" I said, "I've never played golf with him. This will be the first time I've ever played golf with him." Well, y'all make a great team. And I don't know if y'all remember or not. That's a long time ago. Some of y'all aren't even old enough to remember this, but Stads missed a putt of about this long on the 18th hole to lose it. Not with me, but with someone else. I didn't play the first match. So that afternoon, we were playing together. And we were playing every other shot. We're playing Ballesteros and Panero at the time. Of course, everybody knows what Ballesteros was like in the Ryder Cup. He was Mr. Ryder Cup. I'm driving it against Ballesteros, and he's driving it against Panero. So we get to the ninth hole, and we're 3 down. And so I make a birdie putt on 9 for us to win the hole, so we're only 2 down. And at the Belfry, the 10th hole is a drivable par 4 over the water. Stads tells me because he's senior to me, he's older. Lay it up. I said, I'm not laying it up. He said, I said, lay it up. I said, I'm not laying up. Why? I said, Ballesteros is going for it, and they're still 2 up on us. No way. I'm not fixing to give in to him. So, he said, I said, lay it up. I just turned around and walked off. So I drove it, shaved the paint off the pin as it was going by. Ballesteros hits it way over into the water. So now we're 1 down. So go the next hole. Stads is driving it. He drives it way right. And they drive it down the middle. Panero does. Ballesteros hits it on the green about 40 feet from the hole. And as luck would have it, it was in the weeds and stuff, but it was kind of in an area where I could actually hit the ball. And I actually hit the shot in there about 8 or 9 feet from the hole. So we got a chance to win this hole too. Panero makes it from about 40 feet. Staz leaves it short. So we go back down to 2 down. So 12 is a par 3, and I hit it in. They got the tee, so Ballesteros hits it about 30 or 40 feet. I hit it in there about 6 feet. Panero makes it. Stad leaves it short again. Now we're 3 down. 13, we go to the next hole. He snap hooked it. Stad snap hooked it out of bounds. I said, well, it's time to go in yet. So we've had some defeats, and then we've had, I was on some winning teams that were fun to be part of. But in that life, sometimes you're winning and sometimes you're losing. The journey is long, and you just got to persevere and never give up. So,
So 3-time All-American, 1980 USAM, PGA Rookie of the Year in 82, PGA Player of the Year in 83, PGA Comeback Player of the Year in 94, Payne Stewart Award 2007, 14 PGA Tour wins, and 4 Ryder Cups. The awards are there. The respect is there. And you get the phone call to be the 2004 Ryder Cup captain. Only 31 people have ever had that role. And you get the call. Talk about that.
Well, we were at Disney that year, and they called me and asked me to come talk to them, and I went, and they asked me if I'd be the Ryder Cup captain, and I said, I got to think about it. I was only 46 years old, and I was still wanting to play. And they said, sure, that's fine. No one's ever turned us down, though. Okay. So I called home that night, my dad, and I said, told him what had happened. He said, you got to turn it down. I said, they reminded me that no one had ever turned it down. I said, Dad, I said, you know, you work all your life. This is about the biggest honor that they can give you. And I said, you're telling me to turn it down. He said, you can't win. And he said, you know, when you're going to give up 2 years of your life, I know how you do things. He said, you're going to give up 2 years of your life, and then you're going to give up your golf game. And is that worth it to you? Again, my dad's still climbing the ladder for me. And 5 days, and M.G. Oringer, who was the president of the PGA, he called me on the phone. He said, Hal, he said, we need an answer. He said, you know, are you really seriously thinking about saying no? I said, well, I am, M.G. I said, my dad told me I shouldn't do it. And he said, well, Hal, there's no guarantee that the next president would ask you to be the Ryder Cup captain again. And okay. So I told him I'd do it. I called home that night and told my dad, and he said, would you turn him down today? I said, no. I told him I was going to do it. He said, okay. Huh. He said, how you going to take care of your golf game and be the Ryder Cup captain at the same time? Well, I didn't do a very good job of that. You know, at that point, I'll go ahead and expound on this a little bit further. You know, I wanted to do the right thing. I've always wanted to do the right thing. You know, Jackie Burke was one of my very closest friends, and most of the golfers didn't even know who Jackie Burke was. So I wanted Jackie Burke to be assistant captain because I wanted him to be in the team room, and I wanted these guys to get to know him. I respected wisdom. I respected people that came before me. You know, we were moving into an era where the respect didn't go forward as much. They were too busy with themselves. And then the other assistant captain for me was Steve Jones, who was a close personal friend. But he won the U.S. Open at Oakland Hills, which that's where we were playing, was at Oakland Hills. So I took Jackie Burke and Steve Jones as assistant captains with me, who neither one were current. So the only guy that actually knew the players was me. I mean, they knew of them, basically, but they didn't know currently how they were playing. So it was a tall task, basically.
Well, anyone that knows the history knows that just like the most recent Ryder Cup, we didn't fare very well. And here come the voices again. Failure, defeat. And you walked away from golf.
I did. I quit completely.
Talk about that. Talk about the process of, we're going to have to, of walking away from golf, and then at some point you've coined, or not coined the phrase, but you've talked about the word surrender.
Yeah.
So talk about the process of walking away from a game that you loved because of defeat and a lot of outside voices really saying a lot of unfair things. Talk about that process.
Well, uh,
Talk about that time.
it was tough because, my dad did not want me to do it. Once again, dad was right and I was wrong, but anyway, there's some debate to that. Like you said, there's only been 31 people that have ever captained. So, I'm not sorry I did that, but I mean, I'll tell you all the truth. That was maybe the lowest I've ever been in my life in golf because I not only had failed myself, but failed everybody else. And I'm not sure I could have. I mean, I certainly wasn't smart enough to navigate all the obstacles that were thrown my way for the 2004 Ryder Cup. And it would take far too long to tell the stories in here uh, of the things you deal with as Ryder Cup captain. But, um, you know, when I left there, I was hurt. And I had a project. I was doing Boot Ranch at the time. We started Boot Ranch the next month after that. And that gave me something to sink my brain into and forget about the Ryder Cup. And so for 4 years, I didn't play golf at all. And I got this telephone call from Jackie Burke. I told this story earlier, so a couple of guys are going to have to suffer through this story again. Jackie called me and he said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, "I got a meeting." He said, 10 o'clock, meet me on the driving range. I'm driving to Fredericksburg. I said, "Well, Jackie, I don't even play golf anymore." He said, "You're a golfer. Don't you ever forget that. Meet me on the practice tee at 10 o'clock the next morning." So out of respect, I met him on the tee. I took a 7-iron with me on the tee. And I get there and I'm expecting to hit some golf balls. He said, "I drove all the way from Houston because I got a question I want to ask you." He said, "If you were going to sell your golf game, how much would you sell it for?" I said, "Well, why would we even consider that? Because it's not possible." He said, "Work with me here for a minute." He said, "Let's just say that Michael Dell, the richest guy in Austin, calls you on the phone and says, 'Hal, I've got a doctor that can extract your golf game from your body and put it in my body, and I'm willing to pay whatever you'll take for this game.'" He said, "What sort of answer are you going to give him?" I said, "I don't know. It'd have a lot of zeros behind it, I'll tell you that." He said, 10 million, 100 million. I said, "I don't know a lot." He said, "Well, then you tell me why, if it's worth that much to you, you treat it like you have for the last 4 years. He said, "I got to go back to Houston." Now, the only person that could do that was a person that really loved you. And so he left, and I hit balls with that 7-iron. But he kind of shocked me back into what was important to me. And, I've never played golf again since that time like I used to be able to play. But I'm trying to say it doesn't matter. But
Aren't we all?
yeah,
So you've lived a career with a lot of voices. I think we all live a life with a lot of outside voices, but you begin to narrow that voice um, down to one. Talk about that spiritual journey that all this has brought you to and where you are today.
well, I've told this story before. I told it at the Houston Toolbox. My earthly father is who kept score. I think y'all have heard that in my comments here. And I paid attention to his attest. It says score and then it says attest. He was telling me whether I was succeeding or whatever. He stood in judgment. That's what I'm trying to say. And who did I want to please more than anything in the world? My dad. And so 13 years ago, I told my dad, I said, "You know what? I mean, my dad and I were in business together. He was in the oil business, and I can tell y'all, anybody that's been in the oil business, it's like this. And it seemed like when he was here, I was needing his help. And then when he was here, as luck would have it, I was up here. So together, we kind of did this our whole life. He depended on me, and I depended on him. And 13 years ago, I told him, I said, Dad, I'm moving to Texas. And I said, I'm going to move to Houston. I wanted to be near Jackie Burke, and I was retired at that point, and it devastated him because he wanted me to stay close to him, but I wanted to move to Texas. Had always wanted to move to Texas. I built Boot Ranch to live at Fredericksburg, really, and anyway, I did. It was the first time I went to Second Baptist, got to know Dr. Young really well. And it was the first time that I realized that someone was in charge of my scorecard that shouldn't be in charge. And didn't mean that I didn't love my dad or whatever, but I was looking to the wrong person for the acceptance. And so, we talked about surrender. I tell everybody we're on a journey, and I'm on a constant journey to surrender. I mean, every now and then I say, God, I got it. Don't worry about it. I got it. And he doesn't want us to give up or turn it over, but we need to lean on him. And that's a struggle for me. I think I'm not afraid to admit that in here. I'm constantly trying to surrender to God. The older I get, the easier it is to surrender. And I'm looking forward to full retirement where I don't have to do anything that I got to take complete control of. I don't feel like I have complete control over anything right now.
But off script here for me, but I do want to go back to your earthly father and that scorecard, because y'all did have a conversation about love.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
About love?
A little personal.
Well, I touched on it a little bit, earlier, where, your word person, but my dad he's not a person that uses the love word. I mean, he's a person of action, basically. And he proved it to me every day, but all I wanted to hear was the words. And I mean, you must be talking about a specific story.
But he finally told you.
Well, he finally told me he loved me, yeah. But my dad, y'all just have to know my dad. He's a tough guy. He's tough. He doesn't surrender his love very easily. So.
Okay. So there's always another part to the story. But in God's wisdom and in God's voice, he revisited the 2004 Ryder Cup just recently, I believe. I'm going to set the stage here. It's the anniversary of your TPC Sawgrass win against Tiger. And you get to go out to Florida and spend some time on the Golf Channel, relishing the memories, talking about the shots. Really had a great time on the dais with Rich Lerner and Randall Chambly and Paul McGinley. And Rich Lerner, at the close of the interview, turns it over to last question to Paul McGinley, and he brings up the Ryder Cup. And I think it was safe to say at the time that the Ryder Cup probably was your greatest scorecard defeat in your life, even though, ironically, you never hit a shot. I want to reiterate that to everybody, which is interesting because when you played in the Ryder Cups, you actually played very well as a player, but when it was out of your control, but yet you still felt responsible for that. And Paul McGinley, in a moment of, celebration around this anniversary of the TPC Sawgrass win, brings up the Ryder Cup. I want to show y'all what happens. Let's cue that video. Pay attention to this.
Great story to share. Yeah, I got a story about you, Hal, and I don't want to embarrass you in any way. But it goes back to the Ryder Cup captaincy in 2004. I was on the team that played against the team that you captained. Obviously, it didn't go very well for you. And last night, we had a show, I don't know if you saw it. We talked about the modern player, and we talked about taking a lead from the top players and establishing culture and behavior and a code of conduct. And we talked kind of at length about it. And Brando made a really good point about, sometimes and often you learn more about people in defeat rather than what you learn in victory. And we talked about players not, when they don't win, not giving interviews, for example. And we talked in quite a extensive way and as a collective. But I want to share a story about you in 2004, and you might not remember this. Things had gone wrongly for you, and you hadn't won. And it had been a great victory for us away from home. Bernard Liner was the captain. We were super excited to win. Fair to say, we hit the Irish bars that night, and I don't even know if I went to bed at any stage. But we had to reconvene in the lobby of the hotel. I think it might have been the Ritz in Detroit at 5 a.m. in the morning to get our charter flying home. And most of us had not gone to bed. And we all turned up, luggage and everything, in that foyer at 5 a.m. on the Monday morning after having won the Ryder Cup. And there was Hal Sutton with his wife, with your Ryder Cup blazer on, to shake every one of our hands. That meant a lot. That says a lot about you.
Well, being gracious in defeat is hard to do sometimes, but I wanted to be there for you guys. And y'all played great that week, and we didn't play that well. And, we had a lot of circumstances that week that I won't go into, but, it was a tough week. And I left golf after that week, actually. I was still exempt all the way to 50, and, that hurt so bad.
That's why it was so amazing what you did to be that gracious in your probably biggest loss of your career. As I say, hold a lot about Hal Sutton, the person.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, Paul. It was a tough week for me, but I was happy for y'all. So,
It's great to have you, Hal.
Great story.
Al, thank you.
That's a great moment.
when he started talking about that, I had no idea what he was going to tell. So there was so much that went on that week, and you could see me sitting there like, I don't know what I'm fixing to say here, but anyway, he brought up a special moment there. That was the easiest thing I did all week, was to tell them they played well. I was glad to see them get out of town. Oh my goodness, y'all have no idea. My good friend Ben Crenshaw, one of your sons here in Austin. Y'all have had some great players that have come out of Austin, and Mr. Kite and Mr. Crenshaw, but both of them have been captains. Both of them have been one of those 31 guys. So that tells you how special they have been to golf. And, playing for, I didn't play for Tom, but I played for Ben. And playing for Ben was one of the things that I look back on very favorably. He was so gracious, so kind, and one of the things that I look back on fondly is playing for Ben Crenshaw. So,
Great man. I love that video because when you hear your story of all the outside voices and when the chips were all down, it wasn't the right club today, it was the right man today. It said a lot about you and what Paul said about being in defeat but showing your character. So, just briefly, and then we're going to open up a few question and answer. We're trying to get all this in. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
So, when I moved to Texas, I had no plan whatsoever. And my telephone started ringing for me to do things, and I was basically retired. But anyway, my current thing that I'm doing right now is we built a club called Darmore Club in Columbus, and it's we went back to what we all love, just raw golf, basically. We don't have yardage markers on every sprinkler head, and we don't allow music or anything else. So It's very simple. I tell everybody when they come out there and I tour them around the golf course, I said, we're too coddled in America. And I said, I pull up at River Oaks or Houston Country Club and two guys converge on me wanting to get my clubs. I'm like, I got them. These are my tools. I believe we're all on a personal journey to get better, and none of us think we're there yet. We think there's still room for improvement. And if you come out to Darmore Club and you're on your journey and you don't want to be bothered, I don't want any of our people to bother you. There's a couple of members in here, they can tell you that's the way we are. And, if you come out there and you just want to be on your peaceful journey to get better, we're going to allow you to be on that peaceful journey to get better. If you want our help, we'll do anything for you, but you got to ask us to come into that journey. So, I believe we're one dimensional in the United States. We take that rangefinder, we point it, we go right at it. There's so much more to golf than that. It's just like life. You can't simplify it that much, but we want to simplify everything that much. And we're dealing in a world today where we don't even know where the truth is at. We were talking earlier, Facebook, I guarantee you 90% of the things on Facebook's a lie. That's what our kids are looking at. Our kids can't even pay attention. Your grandkids probably, my grandkids. But, they're too busy on this, looking for something. I don't know what they're looking for. I mean, but anyway, I could go all day on that. You don't want me to do that.
No. I mean, that's
I'm a simpleton. I want the truth. And I know there's only a few people around me that I can count on to get that from. So probably a lot of people in here I could get the truth from. I hope.